announcing today a major show of military force in the region.
In the heart of the Persian Gulf, one of the world's most strategically crucial waterways, tensions have been rising between the United States and Venezuela. This region, known for its vital role in global trade and energy shipments, has become the backdrop for a dramatic and dangerous standoff that could change the balance of power at sea. The stakes have never been higher, with military forces on high alert and both nations on the brink of a confrontation that could escalate far beyond mere posturing. In the midst of this escalating tension, an unprecedented incident unfolded. The USS Tempest, an American naval patrol vessel, found itself on the front lines of this brewing crisis. As the ship navigated the Gulf's treacherous waters, it was suddenly confronted by Venezuelan military forces, moving quickly and aggressively in a show of force. What initially seemed like a routine patrol turned into a life-threatening encounter as Venezuelan fast attack boats closed in on the American vessel, seemingly intent on capturing it. As the Venezuelan forces circled the USS Tempest, tensions skyrocketed. This was not just a confrontation between two military powers. It was a message from Venezuela, signaling its growing defiance against U.S. influence in the region. But what happened next was nothing short of explosive. The United States Navy, known for its swift and powerful responses, wasted no time in making its intentions clear. Within minutes, the situation escalated into a high-stakes military operation. U.S. forces engaged the Venezuelan boats, sinking several and disabling others in a brutal demonstration of naval supremacy. This shocking act of military retaliation raised numerous questions about the future of U.S.-Venezuelan relations and the stability of the region. The United States' response was not just about protecting its vessels. It was a strategic move that sent ripples through international waters. It showcased the military power the U.S. is willing to wield to maintain its dominance over vital maritime routes and protect its interests in the Gulf. But what does this incident mean for the future of the region? The Persian Gulf is not just a hotspot for military confrontations. It's the lifeblood of global trade, with vast oil reserves and shipping lanes that are essential to the world's economy. In a region where so many global powers have a stake, the actions of the U.S. and Venezuela could have far-reaching consequences. In the aftermath of the clash, the world is left wondering, what comes next? Will Venezuela retaliate? And if so, how? Will this incident spark a wider conflict? Or will it be the catalyst for a new geopolitical strategy in the Gulf? The questions are many, and the answers are unclear. But one thing is certain. This is just the beginning of a new chapter in international relations and military power plays. Stay tuned as we break down the details of this dramatic incident and explore what's at stake in the high-stakes game of geopolitics unfolding in the Persian Gulf. The Persian Gulf has long been a focal point of global tensions, with its strategic location linking the oil-rich Middle East to international trade routes. For decades, it has been the center of military confrontations, political maneuvering, and economic influence. This narrow body of water, with its access to some of the world's largest oil reserves and vital shipping lanes, has seen numerous global powers compete for dominance. The United States, a key player in the region, has always had a vested interest in maintaining a foothold in the Gulf. From military bases in Qatar to its presence in the Arabian Peninsula, the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet has a strong and unwavering presence in this region. The role of the United States here is clear: to secure the flow of oil, protect its allies, and project military strength in one of the world's most volatile areas. The situation is complicated by the fact that the Gulf is also home to several other powerful players, including Iran, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and more recently, Venezuela, which has increasingly sought to exert its influence on the region's delicate geopolitical balance. While most global attention has been focused on Iran's ambitions and its interactions with the West, Venezuela's involvement in the Gulf is a relatively new and unexpected development. In recent years, Venezuela has found itself on a path of closer cooperation with nations like Iran, seeking to bolster its own influence in the region and to challenge the U.S. presence. In fact, it's been reported that Venezuela has ramped up its naval activities, deploying ships to the Gulf with the assistance of Iran, as part of a broader effort to contest U.S. dominance. Over the past 2 years, the Venezuelan government, facing increasing isolation and sanctions from the West, has sought to expand its military reach beyond the Caribbean. Reports have surfaced about a growing alliance between Venezuela and Iran, with both countries reportedly conducting joint naval exercises in the Gulf. These drills, which have been described by insiders as a show of force, are aimed at sending a strong message to the U.S. and its allies in the region. This new dynamic, however, has led to growing tensions between the United States and Venezuela, which culminated in a series of confrontations in 2025. The U.S., which had already been monitoring Venezuelan naval activity in the Gulf, took notice of increased deployments of Venezuelan military assets. This coincided with heightened rhetoric from Caracas, as President Nicolas Maduro made increasingly aggressive statements about challenging U.S. power in the Gulf. Diplomatic channels between the two countries became strained, and soon after, reports emerged that Venezuelan naval vessels were engaging in more frequent and dangerous maneuvers near U.S. Navy vessels operating in the area. The situation took a dramatic turn when, in early 2026, a Venezuelan fast attack boat was reported to have attempted an aggressive maneuver near the USS Tempest, an American naval vessel patrolling the waters. The Tempest, known for its advanced radar and defense systems, was navigating through the narrow Strait of Hormuz when it was confronted by a Venezuelan warship. The Venezuelan vessel, part of a growing fleet reportedly deployed under the pretext of anti-piracy operations, came dangerously close to the American ship. Sources from the U.S. Navy stated that the Venezuelan crew ignored multiple warnings and failed to respond to the Tempest's attempt to de-escalate the situation. This marked the beginning of a series of provocative incidents that quickly gained international attention. The U.S. response to these provocations was swift. In a move that stunned the global community, American forces, using precision strikes, disabled several Venezuelan boats that had been engaging in aggressive maneuvers near U.S. naval assets. The U.S. Navy showcased its military superiority with a show of force that left no room for doubt about its intentions. This military action was not just about defending the USS Tempest. It was a strategic message to Venezuela and the broader international community. The U.S. would not tolerate challenges to its naval supremacy in the Gulf. But the ramifications of these events go beyond just the immediate military engagement. The presence of Venezuela in the Gulf, though still limited compared to that of Iran, marks a significant shift in the region's geopolitical landscape. Venezuela's growing naval presence, combined with its alliance with Iran, represents a challenge to U.S. dominance in the region and signals the increasing influence of non-Western powers in what has traditionally been a Western-controlled zone. This rising tension, coupled with the economic and military support Venezuela receives from Iran, has the potential to reshape the future of the Persian Gulf. In the coming months, as Venezuela's military activities in the region continue to grow, the U.S. will likely have to reassess its strategy. The Persian Gulf, once a relatively stable theater for American naval operations, is becoming an unpredictable and contested space. As the U.S. faces off with Venezuela, a nation that is economically isolated yet increasingly bold, the balance of power in the Gulf is being tested in ways that could have long-lasting consequences for international relations and global trade. The situation in the Persian Gulf took a dramatic turn when the USS Tempest, a U.S. Navy patrol vessel, was suddenly thrust into the middle of a potentially catastrophic confrontation. The Tempest, known for its advanced surveillance and defense capabilities, had been operating in the Gulf, conducting routine patrols as part of the U.S. Navy's regular operations in the region. The presence of American warships in these waters has long been a symbol of U.S. military power and its commitment to protecting strategic trade routes and maintaining regional stability. But on one fateful day in early 2026, the Tempest found itself at the heart of a high-stakes standoff with Venezuelan naval forces. The confrontation began when a Venezuelan fast attack boat, identified as part of a new and aggressive fleet deployed by the Venezuelan Navy, was spotted closing in rapidly on the USS Tempest. Initially, the Tempest crew believed it was simply a routine encounter, as Venezuelan ships have occasionally been seen in the Gulf on various missions. However, this time, something was different. The Venezuelan vessel, which had been shadowing the Tempest for several hours, began to accelerate toward the American ship in a manner that raised immediate concern among the Tempest's crew. The fast attack boat, a vessel equipped with missiles and armed with advanced naval weapons, came dangerously close, cutting through the water with alarming speed. As the Venezuelan boat closed in, the USS Tempest issued multiple warnings, signaling the approaching vessel to maintain a safe distance. These warnings, according to sources within the U.S. Navy, were ignored by the Venezuelan crew, who continued to steer toward the Tempest. The situation grew more tense as the Venezuelan ship's intentions became increasingly unclear. Was this a simple naval exercise? Or was it part of a broader strategy to assert Venezuela's influence in the region? The U.S. Navy had been monitoring the movements of Venezuelan ships in the Gulf for some time, but this was the first time that a Venezuelan vessel had acted so provocatively near a U.S. ship. The crew of the Tempest was now facing a situation they had hoped to avoid: an unpredictable and potentially hostile encounter in the heart of a volatile region. As the Venezuelan boat drew nearer, it became clear that the crew on board had no intention of backing down. With less than 100 yards separating the two vessels, the USS Tempest activated its defense systems, preparing for what was feared to be an imminent attack. In response, the Venezuelan vessel made a dramatic maneuver, attempting to circle around the Tempest in a clear attempt to cut it off and force it into a position of vulnerability. It was a move that suggested the Venezuelan crew was not just testing the waters, they were engaging in a deliberate act of provocation. The situation quickly escalated as the Venezuelan fast attack boat attempted a daring move to board the USS Tempest. According to reports from U.S. military sources, the Venezuelan vessel attempted to position itself alongside the Tempest, with its crew seemingly preparing to board the American ship. This attempt at an aggressive boarding operation was unprecedented, and the U.S. Navy responded with immediate force. The Tempest's crew, having been trained for such scenarios, enacted their protocols, deploying defensive measures that prevented the Venezuelan crew from boarding. Realizing that the situation had spiraled out of control, the U.S. Navy made the decision to engage the Venezuelan vessel. In a well-coordinated operation, American forces fired a series of warning shots and disabled the Venezuelan fast attack boat with a precise strike. The boat was crippled, its engines destroyed, and it was forced to retreat. The rest of the Venezuelan fleet, which had been lurking at a distance, quickly withdrew from the area, not wanting to escalate the situation further. In the aftermath of the incident, the U.S. Navy's actions were met with mixed reactions. While some praised the decisive response as a necessary show of strength, others questioned whether such an aggressive move would provoke further tensions with Venezuela. Despite the confrontation being resolved without loss of life, it was clear that the incident marked a significant turning point in U.S.-Venezuelan relations. The confrontation was a stark reminder of how fragile peace can be in the Persian Gulf, and how quickly even a seemingly routine patrol can devolve into a major international incident. The USS Tempest's near capture by Venezuelan forces was not only a wake-up call for the U.S. Navy, but also a clear signal that Venezuela was prepared to challenge U.S. naval dominance in the Gulf. It was a high-risk gamble on the part of Venezuela, one that raised serious questions about their long-term strategy in the region. As tensions between the two nations continue to escalate, the world is left wondering whether this incident was an isolated occurrence or the first of many provocations to come. One thing is certain: the confrontation between the USS Tempest and Venezuela's naval forces has set the stage for a new chapter in the ongoing power struggle in the Persian Gulf. The U.S. response to the provocative actions of Venezuela in the Persian Gulf was swift and decisive. The aggressive maneuvering and attempted boarding of the USS Tempest were seen not only as a direct threat to American naval assets, but also as a larger challenge to U.S. influence in the region. The message sent by the Venezuelan Navy was clear. Venezuela was willing to risk direct confrontation to assert its presence and defy U.S. power in the Gulf. This development, coupled with Venezuela's growing partnership with Iran, pushed the U.S. to reconsider its strategy in the region. The Pentagon quickly recognized the potential for the situation to spiral out of control, prompting a rapid military response that would not only protect American forces, but also send a forceful signal to Venezuela and the international community. In a series of calculated military actions, the U.S. Navy launched a counteroffensive aimed at dismantling Venezuela's growing naval presence in the Gulf. Using advanced precision strikes, U.S. forces targeted key Venezuelan naval assets that had been involved in the confrontation, including the fast attack boat that had attempted to board the Tempest. The operation, known as Swift Hammer, was meticulously planned and executed in just hours. The U.S. Navy, taking no chances, disabled several Venezuelan vessels in quick succession, using long-range anti-ship missiles to cripple their engines and neutralize their offensive capabilities. The strikes were precise, ensuring that Venezuela's naval fleet would be rendered ineffective without resulting in unnecessary casualties. While the Venezuelan vessels were forced to retreat, the U.S. had made its point. Any further aggression would be met with overwhelming force. This immediate and overwhelming response to Venezuela's provocation demonstrated the U.S. military's ability to act quickly and decisively in a volatile region. The U.S. Navy's actions not only neutralized the immediate threat, but also showcased its commitment to maintaining control over the Gulf's critical shipping lanes and protecting its strategic interests. By targeting Venezuela's naval assets, the U.S. also sent a broader message to other global powers with interests in the region, particularly Iran, that American dominance in the Gulf would not be easily challenged. The U.S. hoped that this show of force would deter Venezuela from any further aggressive actions and signal to other countries that the U.S. would respond harshly to any challenges to its influence in the region. Yet the consequences of this strike were far-reaching. While the U.S. military's response may have successfully neutralized the immediate threat, it also had unintended consequences on the geopolitical landscape of the Gulf. Venezuela, though not a global superpower, had made a bold statement about its willingness to confront U.S. forces head-on. The events that transpired raised questions about how the U.S. would navigate its future engagements with a Venezuela that seemed increasingly emboldened. For President Nicolas Maduro and his government, the confrontation was not a setback, but rather an opportunity to further position Venezuela as a regional power capable of standing up to the U.S. In the aftermath, Venezuela issued a defiant statement, accusing the U.S. of provocative military aggression and vowing to continue asserting its interests in the Gulf, a region it now viewed as increasingly vital to its strategic objectives. At the same time, the U.S. government faced mounting pressure to justify its actions to the international community. While the military strikes were seen by many as necessary to protect U.S. assets and assert its dominance, critics within the United Nations and certain European powers began questioning the proportionality of the response. Was the destruction of Venezuelan naval assets an overreaction? Was there a risk that such a show of force would escalate into a larger, more dangerous conflict? These were questions that U.S. diplomats and military officials would have to grapple with as they navigated the aftermath of the incident. For the U.S., the balance between deterrence and escalation was delicate, and there was growing concern that Venezuela's relationship with Iran could fuel a dangerous proxy conflict in the region, further complicating the U.S.'s efforts to maintain stability in the Gulf. As the tension between the two nations reached new heights, the U.S. began to shift its strategy in the Gulf. Military experts within the Pentagon pushed for a renewed focus on both conventional and unconventional methods of asserting U.S. power, including the use of cyber operations to disable critical Venezuelan infrastructure and communications. Reports from intelligence agencies revealed that Venezuela had been strengthening its ties with Iran, a country whose own presence in the Gulf had been a point of contention with the U.S. for years. There were whispers of joint military exercises between the two nations, as well as the possibility of Venezuela allowing Iranian forces to use its military facilities for operations in the Gulf. These developments raised alarms in Washington, where officials feared the creation of a hostile, anti-American bloc in the region. In response to these emerging threats, the U.S. Navy stepped up its presence in the Gulf, conducting a series of joint operations with its allies in the region, including Saudi Arabia and the UAE. The increased military activity was designed to send a message to Venezuela and its allies. The U.S. was prepared to act forcefully, if necessary, to protect its interests. The deployment of additional U.S. warships, submarines, and aircraft in the region made it clear that the United States would not allow any country, including Venezuela, to challenge its naval superiority. But beyond military action, the U.S. also sought to apply diplomatic pressure on Venezuela. The United Nations Security Council convened a series of emergency meetings to address the escalating tensions, with the U.S. pushing for international condemnation of Venezuela's actions. Washington worked tirelessly to build a coalition of like-minded nations to isolate Venezuela diplomatically, pressuring it to back down and cease its provocative activities. The U.S. also imposed further economic sanctions on Venezuela, targeting its military-industrial complex and key individuals within the government, hoping to cripple its ability to project power in the Gulf. Despite the U.S. efforts, Venezuela remained defiant. In a bold move, President Maduro announced the formation of a new regional alliance, aimed at countering U.S. influence in the Gulf and beyond. With the support of Iran, Russia, and China, Venezuela sought to position itself as a key player in the geopolitical struggle for control over the region's critical energy resources.